up tonight. We have a very special guest on board with us. His name is Ted Taupier. He is a victim of false accusations and excessive force by law enforcement and the family court system. He has a first-hand account of what tyranny actually looks like, and he's going to be here tonight to tell us his story. With just one false accusation. That's all it takes anymore. Just one complaint. You don't need to verify the complaint. All you need to have is that one complaint. That's all it takes. Well, this man had his First, Second, Fourth, Eighth, and 14th Amendments completely violated, shredded, trashed. He's a former Wall Street chief officer at Citibank, suffering through a brutal divorce and with not so much as even a speeding ticket. Everybody's had a speeding ticket. This guy had nothing, squeaky clean. 75 SWAT team members, 2 armored vehicles show up at his home, tackle him to the ground, confiscate his antique gun collection, which he restored old guns as a hobby, which we all know about guns. That's a crime right there, just mentioning the word gun. You say the word gun. If you're a kid in school, you say the word gun, you're suspended. You're a terrorist. You can't even say that word now. Well, let me tell you something. If it wasn't for that gun, none of us would have our freedom here today. But that's me. I'm the whack job. I'm the crazy person. I use all that common sense and logic. Well, they arrested him with no charges, no real charges, no real evidence, and he is currently still under house arrest with an ankle bracelet. Now, I covered this story back in, I think it was late November, early December. And I went to go find it in my archives, but I do believe it was one of those nights where I lost it, and I had to delete the show because I just lost it. I think that was one of them. But I do remember covering this story. Pure fate or dumb luck, we accidentally found each other on Facebook over the weekend. I asked him to come on board. He agreed. So for that, I am very honored to have him on board tonight, and I really look forward to hearing his side of the story. And this story is going to make you angry. And if it doesn't, well, then you're not paying attention. Shut up and stay out of the conversation. All right. Let's get into our guest tonight here. And I got 2 numbers from the same area code, so I think I've got the right one on here. We'll give it a shot. Mr. Taupier, do I have the right number?
I hope so. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfect. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Kenneth.
All right.
Well.
First of all, I really want to thank you for coming on the program tonight. Your story is very important and very complex. I did some more reading on your story today. I hope we can get through it all. But this story, I really believe, this story here, your story, really gets to the heart of the biggest problem that we have in this country today, and that is tyranny. And that's exactly what this is. This is tyranny. Our beloved Constitution has been completely shredded, and because of America's lack of understanding of that document, it makes it very easy for these people to destroy it. So I want to start off now here kind of in the beginning, when this whole thing got started. I understand you were going through a bitter divorce. You took your 2 children to a bill signing, which we all know that's a crime.
Yes.
What was that bill about, and why did they punish you for that?
All right. So I when I started through my divorce, and this started back in September, October of 2012, I had no idea what I was walking into. I was completely ignorant, never thought I'd ever go through divorce, never wanted to divorce, never had any inclinations for divorce, never, there was no allegations of abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, whatever. I was the guy that stayed home. I don't go out to sports bars. I don't have these hobbies that drive me away and spend all my money on other things that shouldn't be spent on. I just was this guy that, was trying to make a living and, raise a family and do the American dream, right? I had $1 million family, I had 1 boy, 1 girl, everything going great. Wife decides that she wants to go hang out and establish a new life with another Aetna executive by the name of Roger London, who is the Northeast Medical Director. So she goes off and she does all this, and then we get into divorce, and it's a nightmare. And all she wants to do is abscond with the children and go to New York City and leave me out of their life and start a whole brand new life without their father in their life. So I go through this whole thing, and I start realizing that I'm in the crosshairs. Right. Somebody bought a decision, somebody paid for a decision, and it was going her way no matter what. In other words, family services, the guardian ad litem, all the lawyers, they were driving the bus right over to her side, and I was going to get run over by the bus no matter what.
Yeah.
So I joined this group, I'll say this parent group that is fighting corruption and not happy with the way the judicial branch is operating within the state of Connecticut. And what do I really mean by that? I mean, there's policies, procedures that are going on in family court that basically drive us family members that have, and it's only with the middle to upper class. It has nothing to do with the lower class. The people that show up with, welfare checks in their pocket aren't being driven through the system like this. They get a divorce within 30, 90 days. They're done. They're out of it, and family services may or may not even be involved.
Is that because they can't make any money off of them?
That's correct, because there's no money, there's no trust funds, there's no retirement funds, there's no house they can abscond with, there's nothing that they can steal, and there's no, in the state of Connecticut, they use guardian ad litem and AMC payments as child support, even though it doesn't fit with the federal guidelines. All the judges basically say, no, that's child support, and you need to pay that. No matter what, or we'll throw you in jail. We use the debtor's prison concept, So we'll take you, get you fired from your job, throw you in jail, and you have to pay it no matter what. So if you don't have any money to pay it and you own a house, well, you have to sell the house now. You have to give up the house, you have to live in an apartment or live with your sister or live with your brother or whatever, and get rid of your house, get rid of every asset you have and give all the money to us and our court, extended vendors, and then you might be able to see your child. Maybe.
Yeah.
If we like you.
Unbelievable. So what happened here?
I took him to the bill signing that was State Bill SB 494. 494 basically was originally designed to stop the guardian ad litem rookery or extortion scheme in the ADMC extortion scheme associated with family court. One problem is that when we first originally wrote it as a group that was supporting sort of the renovation, I'll call it, of the family court system, that bill then went in front of three judges, Judge Solomon, Judge Carroll, and Judge Bizzuto. Judge Bizzuto is the one that's, ruining my life now.
Right.
And they rewrote the bill, and then the bill got passed by the House and by the floor unanimously. No one even didn't vote. It was the first time I've ever heard this in the state of Connecticut, of the entire state legislature unanimously approving a piece of legislation.
Wow.
Okay, and it was completely approved. Now, it wasn't what we wanted, but it gave us some leverage, and it stopped the GAL AMC extortion game to some extent. So when the signing came up, Minnie Gonzalez, one of the representatives that I love near and dear to my heart, she's been a tireless champion of trying to straighten out some of the most corrupt and idiotic policies and procedures within the state of Connecticut, and totally is out of her league, because most of us that are in this problem don't even belong to her constituency, which is mostly the Hartford constituency. But she stood up like a champion, got this thing pressured and done, and by the miracle of God, we got it passed, and some things started to change. So on the signing date, when the governor was there, we were giving her an award. She was getting recognized. I mean, this was a tireless effort. This was like a 6 to 9 month effort of constant, 20-hour work days to try to get this stuff done. So I went there with my children. I wanted to just say thank you, and I wanted my children to understand the process of legal bills and how you get laws passed and that whole process. So then
education, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, we don't want education for our children. Just I do. So I guess apparently the divorce attorney for my ex said, well, that was against the law because back in June of 2013, the judge had said, I understand, Mr. Taupier, you're bringing politics into my courtroom. I can no longer have politics in my courtroom. There's just no place for it. So you need to not have politics in my courtroom. And I'm like, I don't want to come in your courtroom, and I never talked about politics. I never had a sign. I'm not running for office. I literally didn't know where she was admonishing me from. I had no basis of understanding of. She was just ranting, basically. Right. But it's okay for her to rant, and take away my civil rights. But it's not okay for me to bring my children to a bill signing. That's illegal.
Yeah.
So I got grievance for that in contempt, held in contempt for that.
Well, what it is probably somebody got exposed, and either her or one of her friends or whatever, they just wanted to use that against you, right?
It was retaliation. Yeah, it was complete retaliation for me actually being a part of legislative representative government. They don't want people like me that actually wake up and read books and don't necessarily watch TV and get involved. They want people that go to sleep.
Isn't that your civic duty?
It is.
At least I thought. That's your civic duty to get involved with this stuff. Okay, I just wanted to clarify. I thought I was
civic duty.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I wanted to teach my children a little bit about civic duty and the ownership that they have to take ownership of their country, not only their civil rights, but the rights and laws of the state in which they reside.
Now, with that bill, obviously you had problems with the guardian ad litem beforehand. That's what got you interested in that? Is that?
Yes. Yeah, my guardian ad litem, her name was Margaret Bozak. She basically railroaded me and the decisions. And, I mean, when you get into divorce, you've never been through divorce, you have no idea what it's like. And they just basically, they don't explain anything. They just maneuver you around through a system, and they take total advantage of you, and they rip you off. So basically $20,000 later, I'm ripped off, and I'm explaining to the fact that, my ex-wife doesn't feed my children, she doesn't bathe my children, she doesn't take care of my children. In nutritional status, and I don't want to talk over people's head, but eating food and the right foods will prevent your teeth from rotting in your head. So also part of this contempt motion where I was admonished from going and doing representative government with my children, they also blamed me for creating cavities in my children's head. And I know that I'm an engineer, and I know that I'm probably pretty smart, but I wasn't creating cavities. I didn't have like a science kit that I was building to throw stuff in my kid's mouth to create cavities, right?
Right.
That's nutritional status, meaning the more you eat in healthy foods as you develop and your teeth develop, that's when your teeth fight off infection, and that's what counteracts the cavity creation within your mouth and the saliva. And there's a whole story behind why I know all this, but I don't want to go into details. That's what also happened. And so I fought the guardian ad litem. I grievanced her, and I eventually got her kicked off my case. And I was one of the first people to do so as a direct result of this bill being created, and they all knew that this was coming. Basically, the guardian ad litem extortion network in extended vendor family coordination with the judges was disappearing. And that's what they really hated, because I was throwing a monkey wrench in the fact that you can no longer just assign guardian ad litems to a family case, and they can't just arbitrarily bill. Now, what does a guardian ad litem do? Well, they're supposed to be engaged with the children. They're supposed to be a point of contact for the children. My guardian ad litem saw my children for a total of an hour and 20 minutes over a 1.5-year period. And then in 2014 in March, she said to my lawyer, she said, no, Mr. Taupier is disrupting his kids, and this summer he doesn't need to see his children at all.
Disrupting? What was her excuse or her reason?
She felt that I would unstabilize my children by having visitation and seeing them throughout the summer, taking them to the beach, going to the park, going to Six Flags, spending time with my family at the pool, having holidays with them like 4th of July. That would be disruptive and unstabilizing for the children.
Well, absolutely. I mean, a child sees his father, that's very disrupting. I mean, you can't have that. I mean, my God. Well, what it is they want to. Well, the reason why they do this is because they're trying to separate you from the children. And the more contact you have with the child, that's disruptive because, well, they are missing you, and they don't want to see the child cry. They don't want to have to deal with that crying child. So they think in their mind, if I can separate the child with the parent, the child won't cry anymore, and I won't have to deal with this crying child. I mean, that's sick. So
when I started to sense all this going on with the guardian ad litem, I said, all right, there's a game going on here. And it took me 6 or 7 months for me to figure out that I was in a family circle, game. And I don't know because I don't live in courts. I never lived in court. I worked on Wall Street. I dealt with financial derivative, trading systems. I don't deal with court stuff. And the complexity of this stuff really started to hit me. I said, how is this possible? So I started doing research, and I looked up the guardian ad litem, and I found numerous. I'm not talking 5 or 10 or 20. I'm talking about 50 to 100 people that had a problem with this GAL, guardian ad litem. Her name is Margaret Bozak. And we are still having problems with this GAL by the name of Margaret Bozak. And she's protected by the judicial branch and nothing. Like, I grievanced her, and I can't even believe some of the stuff that she put in her affidavits. I mean, I just can't even believe this person is actually a lawyer. Like, I can't believe she has a PhD in law and is supposed to care for the children and be the eyes and ears of the court for the best interest of the children. And
now,
I have no idea.
GAL, do they have to be a lawyer?
They do not. You take a 30-hour course, and whiz-bang, you pop out a little certificate on PowerPoint, and somebody signs it, and they say you're a GAL.
Well, I do know most GALs, these guardian ad litems, most of them have complaints on them. About every single one of these families that I deal with, it's not an exaggeration. It's true.
No.
Every single family that I've dealt with, the GAL has been kicked off their case because of things that they've done. I mean, they've got complaint after complaint after complaint. You can Google some of these names, and you can see the list of complaints that they have. So I don't know what their job description is. I don't know if they're overworked, if they're stressed out, what the problem is, or maybe what they're eating. I don't know.
Well, they want the most amount of money in billable time. Now, a GAL is not acting as a lawyer. Excuse me. They're actually acting as the eyes and ears of a judge to understand the real factual basis of what's going on between the dynamic of the both parents and then the children or child involved in the two living sequences that are going on, and helping to understand for the judge as just a witness to the eyes and ears of the court. Now, they're supposed to be involved, meaning they're supposed to have relationships with the children. My children wouldn't be able to tell you who Margaret Bozak is. They'd have better opportunity to tell you who President Obama is with a picture. They would not know who Margaret Bozak was. But she charged me $20,000 to tell me what I need to know about my children.
Unbelievable. $20,000 to be told what you already know.
Right.
Oh. Well, let's get into how you got arrested. Now this is how you got arrested. This right here. I mean, I think that's what set me off, and I lost it. And it is one of those that I did have to delete because I just went nuts. Yeah, I had to delete on my archives. I had to get rid of it. I didn't want anybody to hear me. I just went off the deep edge. But I felt great. I know that it felt really good, but it wasn't professional. So I am going to remain professional. Although I did drink a couple extra cups of coffee tonight to make sure I'm damn irritable.
You're live and awake, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I've had a couple of arrests. My divorcing wife actually hired a criminal attorney back in 2013 and had me arrested under voyeurism charges, which still have yet to be adjudicated through a trial. I've been requesting a trial for just about 2 years now. And the same court that's adjudicating me for my SWAT team raid email threatening case, they're also not ready to do that. I guess they're not ready to do that. They don't have enough evidence, or They raided the house, searched every computer, didn't find child porn, didn't find guns, didn't find what they needed from the voyeurism case, so now they don't know what to do there. That's another false arrest. So,
well, what was that voyeurism? You just videotaped with consent with your wife, and you gave her a massage. Now, how was that voyeurism?
Yes. Well,
I
guess apparently the local police department isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. That's the Cromwell Police Department. And if you give them like $5,000 or $10,000, they will arrest anybody. And apparently that's what they did. And so they needed me indigent and out of work so that she could take off to New York City with the children, and I would have no room to fight her, because if I don't have a job, I don't have money, I don't have income, I have no future, and I'm adjudicated as a criminal, I can't protect my kids, and I can't stop that from happening.
Right, you can't fight back. Yeah.
I can't fight back, right. So that's called divorce through 911. That's what we call it here in Connecticut. So you get a divorce, you want the kids, you just have that person arrested. Now, let's take a half a step back quickly. I know probably close to, out of 100 litigants, 95 of them all have criminal charges pending or had criminal charges pending against them in the state of Connecticut that are involved with divorce in this family sort of coalition group that we have to do reform in the state.
Wow.
So what does that say about the state of Connecticut? When you want to get divorced and you want to have total control, and they always do it to the best parent, by the way. In other words, the worst parent gets the children, the best parent gets arrested, and then you, as the best parent, spend the rest of your life fighting to get back what you lost because of your illegal arrest. But of course, it costs $500,000 to $1 million to fight an arrest, and it takes 2 or 3 years because the wheels of justice are slow. But when they finally turn, everything's like perfect and harmony and rainbow and butterflies and all that stuff. So I was arrested, never adjudicated. I kept asking for a trial, couldn't get a trial. After 7 months, the original person that signed, the prosecuting attorney that signed the warrant, and this is another thing that's really kind of crazy, is my ex hired, his name is Christopher Morano. Now, Christopher Morano is the same guy that adjudicated Michael Skakel so many years later after the Martha Moxley murder, and then that case was just repealed because of inadequate counsel, basically. So he was the chief prosecuting state's attorney that took a hand in actually prosecuting Michael Skakel, who I feel is pretty much innocent, but that's just me just knowing some of the key facts. So he jumps in and he says, well, no, I'm going to call the prosecuting attorney, Barbara Hoffman, who's the PA, and he says, look, I've seen the evidence, I have the evidence, and you need to arrest this guy. So without anything being seen, any affidavit being signed, he signed no affidavit, she signs the warrant, and Judge Gold signs the arrest warrant. So that's my first arrest. So I get arrested. 2 hours after they fingerprint me, they bring me back to my house, and everything goes on down the road. But now there's a nationwide defamation campaign about how I'm some sick person who is like doing voyeurism in the Starbucks. But instead it's like a home video. But nobody publishes the fact that it's my ex-wife accusing me of the voyeurism. So, okay, that's out of the way. A year later, a year and a half later, I'm pro se, meaning I'm self-representative because I can't get out of this divorce after 2.5 years or 2 years. I still can't get divorced. I don't want to be married to this person anymore. I just want this whole thing to end. I don't want to pay lawyers anymore. I want to have a 50-50 custody split. I just want my children to see me half the time, her half the time. I just want harmony. I want some future. So I'm asking.
I wanted to find out what is the reason. I mean, why is that divorce not signed yet? Who's stopping it? Why would the judge not sign this divorce? It's obviously that you two can't live together.
No.
What is the reason?
The reason is the court vendors, i.e. the lawyers that are representing parties, and the guardian ad litem and the therapist that is now assigned to the kids, and family services and the cross-funding grants and the federal grants to know that there's a family service case enacted. All of these things fund other people's jobs, right? So if a lawyer isn't in court, the lawyer's not filing motions, the lawyer's not getting paid. So the judges know this. And if you just start canceling, and quickly solving divorces, guess what? The lawyers don't get paid. So all the lawyers go to get drunk, in the afternoon with all the judges, and it's one big, happy family. And so the court vendors, i.e. lawyers and therapists and, extortionists like GALs and AMCs and all these other, whatever court-appointed, visitation specialists, children visitation, children reunification specialists, all these kind of people. After they've taken your kids, you need to go pay them to go get back to see your kids. And after you see your kids, then they make you go through more court to try to figure out how to get your kids back in your life full-time or half-time or whatever. So it's all of this stuff. If they don't elongate your divorce, they don't get money. The lawyers don't get money. The system doesn't get money. We spend $2 billion annually in the state of Connecticut literally on the judicial branch in the criminal cases and the family court cases.
Oh, my God.
We don't have that many people here, dude.
I know. Look, I've been to Connecticut. It's a very pretty state, but, it's not very populated. New York City, I think, has, 3 times the population of Connecticut altogether.
Connecticut,
so.
Yeah. It's
so,
like 7-8 million in New York City. It's 3.5 million in the state of Connecticut. So how much tax dollars have to come from every person paying taxes in order to fund a $2 billion runaway machine? Now, these lawyers and these judges, they all leave their offices at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, you could show up with a video camera outside and watch these judges walk in and out, and they're out of their jobs. They come in at 9 and they leave at 2 or 3. Their days are not hard.
There's golfing to be done.
Right. There's bars and restaurants to be seen and all that stuff.
Hookers and you name it. So
you got it. Yep.
I didn't want to go down that road, but I couldn't. I couldn't bite my tongue quick enough. But I'm telling the truth anyway. So let's get into this divorce here with the 75 SWAT team members with machine guns and the 2 armored vehicles. Now, what the hell?
Hell's going on? All right. So we have this coalition or / group of families, right? Group of people that are involved with this troublesome divorce system that goes on in the state of Connecticut every day. Right. And I vented one afternoon for various reasons. Basically, my ex, I was pro se, so I was self-represented, and my ex's attorney filed this vexatious, list of 6 major complaints, like cavities. I was having sex in front of the kids with the nanny. All of this, like, silly stuff. She might as well have said I was absconding to Italy with the children as well. I mean, it was just erroneous. And so I flipped out on her, and she sent me 4 different copies of it. And when I looked on the case detail system, now here's the issue. When somebody files these kind of motions, if you're a pro se litigant, the judiciary that receives these motions and the court caseworkers that manage the court cases are supposed to inform you if they've been approved to move forward or they've been denied. I don't get any denial notice. In fact, I get nothing because I'm pro se, and they don't have to do anything because they know that I don't have any standing in the court because I'm a pro se self-represented litigant.
Wow.
So she approves it, and she scheduled a hearing for 9/2, September 2nd.
Wow.
And so this motion that was completely BS, and it made no sense to anyone, I vented to 6 people on a private email. It was never intended to the judge. It was at half Charleston Heston, half F-35s and smart bombs and international space stations, and there was a bunch of hyperbole all woven in there.
Right.
So one of these people take the email and they start sending it out. And her name is Jennifer Verno. Now, Jennifer Verno was on this task force to help fix the guardian ad litem and AMC problem. And she was the one that actually was corresponding with me earlier that morning. So I included her in on my rant.
So you thought that she was like one of your
us. One of us.
Yeah.
So then she spends the next 5 days surfing the email to many, 10, 15 people, trying to see if somebody would actually pick up the phone and call the police and have me arrested.
All right.
So there's no luck because everybody in the family court says, oh, it's just Teddy. He's ranting. He's extremely intelligent, but he's a little off sometimes when things are completely broken, and he just went off. It was 11:50 at night, and it was a Friday, and I had a long work week, and I work on Wall Street, so it's not, now that I'm pro se, I'm working full-time on my job at court and full-time at my job at work. So she then doesn't get the response she needs, so she sends it to this other person, Linda Allard, who is part of the Greater Hartford Legal Aid Council funded by the judiciary.
Oh.
She picks it up and says, oh, my God, don't send this to me. Send me a screenshot by text. And so Jennifer takes a text picture, sends it to Linda Allard by text and telephone, and then Linda Allard sends it to Bizzuto, Judge Bizzuto, who's the judge on my case.
Wow.
So get this. Judge Bizzuto then picks up the phone and she starts calling people and probably emailing people. Now let me ask you this question. Is it in the judicial preview of her job to start to text and email people to have somebody arrested, or is that outside her judicial responsibility, which would give her qualified immunity?
Well, I would say it would be completely outside of her job description by every stretch of the imagination. And I read parts of that email, and I didn't see a direct threat to anybody.
Right.
I mean, to anyone. There was no direct threat. You did not say, I want to kill this person over here. I want to, maim this person over here. I want to dismember this. There was none of that. There was none of that. And you do have a First Amendment right, because I'm holding the Constitution in my hands. I don't know if you can hear that. Well, this is one of the last remaining documents that the government hasn't confiscated yet. And they're not going to get this document. Even from my cold, dead hands, they're not going to get it. My cold, dead fingers will still not release this document to the government. It's mine.
That's a threat according to the state police here in the state of Connecticut, if you say something like that.
I'm also a domestic terrorist, BI, because I believe in individual freedom. So, I got a double whammy there. So.
Kenneth, I don't know what we're going to do with you, man.
I don't know. I'm just a big creep. So,
so anyhow,
yeah.
I come back to the email, and I said, okay, so Judge Bizzuto goes off on a tirade, and she really doesn't like the last comment, which is all about her divorce. And I'm going to speak briefly about this because it's really important to the story. I put
that in the chat room. There is that's a whole, that right there. We could cover a whole show just based on her divorce alone and what she's been up to.
Yes, the MOD in her divorce is just quickly, and I'll brief through this real quick.
No, that's fine.
She found a nanny because both her and her ex-husband now, were lawyers. So apparently she liked the nanny and started to have relationships with the nanny in the home with their children. And then he liked the nanny, so he started having relationships. Her ex, her husband at the time, had relationships with the nanny. And then they both had relationships with the nanny in their home with their kids. And then they both fought over the nanny in the divorce like a 67 Corvette in the divorce. Wow. So now I don't know this when I'm going through my divorce, but why do I want to have a sex slave, judge, crazy sex person presiding over whether or not I'm moral enough to have access to my kids? Why do I want her judging my divorce, like in presiding over my? Why do I want her on the bench? Period.
Really?
If she's got that kind of a divorce, what makes her qualified to be a lawyer, let alone a judge? And you know why? Because her family is the Bizzuto family of Connecticut. They run the Republican Party in Connecticut. Period.
Money.
Money, baby.
Yep.
So yeah, so she's like, if you read I think it was her brother, it might have been her father who passed away. I can't remember offhand, but they didn't even mention Elizabeth A. Bizzuto much in the obituary. They said, and there's this other person, Elizabeth A. Bizzuto, and they don't mention anything about her in the obituary, which tells you that they think of her as the black sheep, right? She's the one-off. Well, if her own family is treating her like this, she went to Western New England College. She could have gone to Yale. She could have gone to Brown. They had tons of money. They could have sent her anywhere, right, to be a lawyer. She chose Western New England Nowhere College, and now she's a judge in the state of Connecticut in running people's lives through divorce court, knowing that she's got this sick past of her own family, and now she's trying to pass judgment on us people who aren't lesbian or gay parents. You know, we're not same-sex marriages, but yet she's okay. There's no bias. There's no perception of bias in her views of life because she's just a nanny, and I called her a nanny. You know what, right, from the email if you read it. She's banging her nanny. So I'm not sure that person's qualified to be my judge or anyone's judge in their family court case.
Well, a lot of reasons why they do this. Now, I don't know if you remember Governor Spitzer here in New York.
I do.
Okay, he was out there. He was prosecuting all these people that these Johns and these hookers. And
he was a naughty monkey.
Right. And the reason why they do that is because they're trying to hide themselves. So if they go out there and prosecute all these other so-called bad people, it makes them look like they're good, and no one's going to look at me if I go out and do all these bad things. And that's what it is. That's a coward and a bully. So.
Yes. And the history of that is really there's a woman in our state called Susan Skip, and she's lost her kids, lost access to her children, much like I've lost access to my children, and she hasn't seen her kids in many, many years, like 4 or 5 years. And Bizzuto did that to her. And, you know, it just goes to show this isn't a one-time deal. These judges and these guardian ad litems, they have a system to extort all the money from you. They ruin your life, and then they take the good parent, separate them from the kids, and you spend the rest of your life fighting to go see your children again. That's the system. So anyhow, back to the arrest. Bizzuto calls the state police. State police come in, and they say, okay, we're going to arrest this guy. And they issue a false affidavit, this guy named Daniel DeJesus, or Jesus, whatever you want to call him. Jesus. He goes off and he writes up this false affidavit for an arrest warrant, and then he writes up this false arrest warrant, and then everybody signs it, and this guy named Edward Malarkey signs it. Now, he's the same judge 3 months earlier, 4 months in July, had admonished a lawyer, a female lawyer, in a Rockville court in Tolland, Connecticut, Tolland County, for off the record. He did this. He physically turned off the recording machines and all the court recording equipment and said any lawyer that would defend the Second Amendment rights in the state of Connecticut should be clearly ashamed of themselves.
Oh.
So he's not biased towards guns at any point. So he signs the risk warrant and he signs the arrest warrant. And then they show up at my house on Labor Day weekend on Friday at 3:00 with no press.
How did they find out you had guns? I mean, how did that come about? Somebody, your ex-wife, say something to somebody that you had?
Yeah. Yep. They were in contact with her, and she said, "Oh yeah, he has tons of guns and everything, and he's a gun guy, and he has a gun, and he knows how to spell gun." And
but you actually right, he can spell gun. We got to get rid of. But you actually don't you take old guns and repair them? And wasn't 8 of those guns, weren't they given by your ex-wife's father? Were they given them to you? So your ex-wife's father gives you guns. And
yeah, he passed away in 2007, in February of 2007, a month before my daughter was born. And in cleaning out the house, we found 9 guns total. One of them was not working. One of them was just this old, like a firearm you'd want to put over your mantle. You would never use it. It was a Mauser that had been abused, and you could never repair it. It just wasn't worth repairing. So he had all these guns. He left them to me. I had to actually go buy a safe, a big giant safe in my garage, and bolt it to the floor with 9-inch anchor bolts to the cement floor in my garage and bolt it to the floor and then store the guns in there. And I had a few guns myself. I actually had 9 guns of my own. And I acquired them over time because as I found them, I worked with a dealer. His name is Ron Artman. He's a great dealer out of Bridgeport. And he would find older guns and more of like old military replica rifles. And my dad had one in Vietnam or during the Vietnam conflict. And, you know, I wanted him to have the original A1 rifle, which is pre-ban, and I wanted him to have that gun before he passed away. And we used to go target shooting together with my 82-year-old dad right this year. So, I mean, it was important to me to have my father and me have a sport to do. You know, some people do fishing, some people do hunting. All my dad and I wanted to do was go target shoot. So I had a couple of guns. I had a couple of pistols. Actually, good point about this. One of the pistols was actually for one of the state troopers that called me that day that arrested me with the SWAT teams. He used to run the high risk interdiction teams for the state of Connecticut out of Tallinn. He was actually the Tallinn troop commander out of Tallinn, Connecticut. His name is Leon Pierce. And so Leon actually called me the day before, and he said, Teddy, I don't know what the hell's going on in the state of Connecticut, but you are under a lot of pressure right now, and if I call you tomorrow, you need to do exactly what I tell you, because I fear that people want you dead. So the state police and the courts actually wanted me dead. They wanted me to resist in some way to give them an excuse to just shoot me with the 75 SWAT team. So that's what kind of state we live in. Literally. And I have the phone records, and I have a text message where he says, Teddy, call me as soon as you get out of jail. We need to talk about that phone call we had yesterday. So he sends that text message to my cell phone. So, you know, I can't make this up, and I'm not making it up. And you can, I mean, I'm sure AT&T or the NSA or somebody has a record of that phone call. And with a little bit of federal power, you could actually pull that phone call up and listen to what he told me. And, you know, here's the state of Connecticut State Police wanting to kill me based on feedback from a judicial branch and a judge.
I mean, this is insanity. But why would they need 75? I mean, I could see maybe, 3 or 4. But you got one man. Why would you need 75 and then 2 armored vehicles? I mean...
Well, you want to make it a statement because I'm a heinous criminal, right? I'm a guy that works from home in his shorts and his underwear and T-shirt, and I got 2 Labrador retrievers. I got a fish tank, and I'm crazy. I've never been.
We send less than that out to get the Taliban, for crying out loud. I mean,
right?
What
yeah.
the hell? These are American citizens, for God's sake. This is what irritates me. We're American citizens. And I'm sick and tired of people coming to the defense of the police. Oh, you just got to do what they say, do what they say. Well, you know what? There's a fine line between being complicit and being gullible. At some point, you have to stand up, a human being, whether we're an American citizen, whether we got a constitution or not. But at some point, you got to stand up and say, no, I'm sorry, but I got to resist this. This is wrong. Because if you just surrender and go to court and work it out later, forget about it. You're not going to be able to work that out.
No, it's a $2 million bill. If I had stood and fight it, I probably would be dead, and all the cops would look like heroes. But now instead, what I get is I get a $2 million legal bill to fight all this. And so where's the justice in America? Because the court, they get paid for by the state. So the state has unlimited resource. And you know what? They'll just tax more if they need more money to prosecute.
Right. Yeah, that's easy to do.
So there's no room. So they show up. He calls me, actually, that morning. Leon called me that morning, said, Teddy, what are you doing? Or that afternoon at 3 o'clock, 3:30. I said, nothing, I'm working. He's like, are you home? I said, yeah, I'm home. He goes, well, you need to do this right now. Get out of your office, go downstairs. Now, he's been to my house. He's met with me. His kids come over for birthday parties. I've known him for 8 years. So he said, just walk out your front door. Do not have anything in your arms or in your hands. Just come out the door. And not like I'm barefoot. I've got a pair of shorts on. a T-shirt on and my cell phone in my hand, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, you're going to see a white van and then the armadillos come down the street. And sure enough, the armadillos come down the street, and they got 2 M60 machine guns sitting on the top, ready to start firing off 7.62 rounds through a house that not only will not stop that round, but that round will continue to go for like 3/4 of a mile.
Oh, absolutely.
And kill everybody in its path. So
yeah, well,
I'm like, okay, you couldn't have just called me with my lawyers to come down to the state police department? You had to come here with a SWAT team?
Well, that's because you had a gun.
I know. I could spell a gun. I didn't have a gun.
Right.
They didn't know that until they got here.
Jesus, God Almighty! And I suppose they weren't very nice about their arrest either. You probably got tackled to the ground. And...
Oh yeah. I was thrown to the ground. I have a chipped tooth. They smacked my head and mouth against the ground, and I chipped my tooth in process.
Well, what was the reason for that? I mean, you weren't resisting. They came up to you and they.
My hands were on my head. I had my cell phone in my hand, and I turned it off, and I didn't resist. I didn't move. I didn't do anything. Of course, all of them had their fingers on. So another thing, I'm really big on gun safety, and all of these SWAT idiots that were running around all had their fingers on the trigger, which you never cover a trigger. It's called trigger control, finger control. Right. You never put your finger on the trigger unless you need to shoot. And then all these guys are running around, and they all got their fingers on the trigger. I'm like, okay, so who the hell is training these idiots? That's what I want to know. Because
they were probably told, he makes one wrong move, you gotta
shoot him.
You gotta shoot him.
Shoot him. I'm in my shorts and T-shirt. Shoot me. Yep.
I wonder how many of those SWAT team members lost their job because you didn't get shot.
I don't know. I don't think any. I think they just get paid to go. Well, I think about a week and a half later, they had to send the same SWAT brigade over to this guy in, I think it was Ellington. He was in his backyard on his deck cleaning a rifle, and somebody drove by, saw him on the back deck cleaning a rifle, and they called a SWAT team on him, and they went over there, and he wouldn't talk to the cops because he's just sitting on the back of his deck, not hurting or injuring anyone, on his own personal property of 2 acres, and they descended SWAT on him, and they took his guns, and they took him into custody, and then you never hear anything about it. So they probably, he probably got, charged with resisting arrest and whatever else they could come up with, because he was on the back porch just cleaning his gun.
Cleaning the gun. Yeah, that's a crime. Yeah, that's a horrible person. Wow.
In your property, on your property, in your backyard, away from anyone, there were no children playing, there wasn't a preschool there, it wasn't, it was just a guy sitting on.
Well, the government doesn't like private property because it's the government's property. It's not your property.
Right.
It's there. So we do got a lot of people that want to ask some questions. Would you mind taking a question or two here for a couple minutes?
I don't mind at all. Fire away.
All right. Now, I have no way of determining what your name is on here. I just got your phone number, so I'm just going to read the last 4 digits of your phone number. And if I do, then you're on the air. So if you are 1274, you are now on the air.
Turn that down a little bit. Jamie,
you have a question for Ted?
Yes. Hi.
How you doing?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Hi, this is Cheryl Martone from West Haven, Connecticut.
Cheryl.
So I started. Hi, Ted.
Hi.
I said a lot of prayers for you along the way because the question is I have for you is that did you ever check because I know the story. I've been watching it on our coalition wall, Coalition for Connecticut Family Court Reform, if you don't mind me saying that.
Nope.
Did you ever check the email I sent about the notice of confidentiality, the copyright infringement that, I was talking about?
Absolutely, I did.
That they sent his email out, that they sent this to a public employee, and he sent Ted sent his email out, and it said notice of confidentiality. So in other words, that the person that sent it out, Jennifer, infringed on his copyright laws. The copyright laws. Did you look that up?
Oh.
He didn't tell you that part.
No, that was one of the many to the words complexity and details. Yeah, there's a lot of that's why I think she took a screenshot with her cell phone and sent it to Linda Allard so she could bypass that piece of it, and saying that I don't have to abide by the confidentiality agreements because I can just screenshot it with my cell phone and send it up the chain. And then, allow Bizzuto to gain access to it because, Linda Allard then sent it to Bizzuto. And then, obviously, they must have had conversations. And then Bizzuto then called this guy, Brian Clemens, who is the head of judicial marshals. So he's like the super judicial marshal person in charge of all the marshals in all the courts. And a little interesting tidbit about him is he's actually the hockey coach of Rocky Hill High School. And he also has a 2-year pastry chef degree from St. John's College, out in upper state New York in the Adirondacks. So he's really super qualified to be the head of judicial marshals and understand what law is all about, right? So
family law, that matter.
Yeah, family law and freedom of speech or any of the Constitution.
Criminal law too, huh?
Yeah.
Well, he can make pastries. That's all you need to know.
Well, my main concern is this notice of confidentiality. If you send it out, if you send that to certain people, your letter, wouldn't that still abide to those people about the copyright infringement?
It should, Cheryl. It should, absolutely. But I think the state of Connecticut, if they're not going to worry about the First Amendment, they're definitely not going to worry about some little subsection of an email to govern whether or not they have the legal right to do what they're doing. Right. So that's the only. You're dead on, Cheryl. I'm not questioning it. It's totally correct. But nobody cares in the state of Connecticut. Yeah.
Especially if you're a law-abiding citizen too.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
They don't. You abide by the. You've always abided by the laws, and you've always.
I paid my taxes.
Respected your Second Amendment rights.
I take my rights, my human rights and verbal rights and all the amendments, the Fourth Amendment right and the Eighth Amendment right and the 14th and 15th Amendments. I mean, very serious. It's hard for me to say why the state is doing this, other than obviously I touched a nerve within the Bizzuto family and the Republican family, and they don't like that nerve touched. And although she's the redheaded stepchild of the family, I think they felt indebted to go ahead and protect her with all costs. Unfortunately, that ruined a bunch of other people, right, including my 2 children. So it's just
they were protecting her to protect themselves, is what they were doing.
Right.
Yeah, because they're all the queens and kings in our court system, our judicial system. They rule the roost.
Yeah.
The judges, they rule the roost. Although they're supposed to be referees, not lords and kings, queens and kings,
and juries,
whatever. Right. They're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to follow the rules. And I do go court watch, and I do see them break a lot of the rules in the courts.
Yeah, that's another show, I think.
Well, that's another show, and that's going to be what's in this year's agenda at the LOB.
Right.
Because we're going to make it that, right, Ted?
Yes.
Do you think
that's our thought.
That's our thought.
We'll have to see what they really want to do. Sometimes the LOB doesn't align. The legislature doesn't always align with what we demand. But that's our goal. We try to participate in representative government as best we can, help them see the injustices that need to be corrected, approve efficiencies, and stop wasting our tax dollars on nonsense. Right. So that's what we try.
Wasting. There's a lot of wasting going on in the courtrooms. A lot of wasting of our tax dollars. Yep. I see it every single day out there. Every single day. That's why I got involved with going to parents' court cases. My son's out of the system now, Bob.
Right.
One thing I got to say is, I became indigent in the family court system. And so now they're trying to criminalize me because they can't squeeze any more money out of me.
Well, they just criminalized me first and then squeezed all the money out of me.
Well, that's what the family court did. Juvenile court, then the family court system did to me.
Yeah.
Squeezed all the money they could get out of me and then stole my kid.
Okay.
And corrupted his mind. put him with, you're right about that. He was listening to me earlier, listening to this whole show earlier, and he said, because you said, about best interest of the children, he said they never had the best interest in mind for me. No, never, ever.
It's never in the best interest of their children. It's in the best interest of their pocketbooks. That's all it is.
That's right. It's the best interest for their pocket. They could care less what the children, the good for the children.
They've taken advantage of the law to make a profit, and they can care less. They don't look at these children and these mothers as human beings. That's money. How can I make money off of this person?
Right. And how do I keep the money chain going?
They're not even following the laws. They break the judge. I seen Judge Bizzuto. I was in Peter Zizmanik's hearing for the GAL phase.
Yes.
I seen. I don't know if I should mention the lawyer's name, but I seen the lawyer say, "But Your Honor, you're not following the law." He had to tell her 5 times until she said okay, because he's got his case in appellate court now. And I know about Judge Bizzuto. I've watched a few of her cases. She's definitely not fair.
Yeah.
So I could attest to that.
Fair is not the word that comes to mind with Miss. I don't know whether she's a Mrs. Bizzuto or Miss Bizzuto or Miss and Nanny Bizzuto.
A Ms. The L word Bizzuto.
Miss L Bizzuto.
GL, like the GLB, whatever that gay society thing is.
All right.
We won't go into that, but
no. Well, thank you, Cheryl, for calling in. I appreciate it.
God bless you, Ted, and keep up the stand up in our corrupt tyranny court system. That's
all I got. I don't have anything else. Well, thanks, Cheryl.
All right, hey Ted. Before we take another call, I want to get into this real quick. This bond that you had. First of all, you had a $35,000 bond that you paid, and then you go to court and they add on another $40,000. Now, what the hell was that one all about? How can you possibly do that? How can they do that? Yeah. And then add another $40,000. And what was the reason for that extra $40,000?
Great point there, Kenneth. I was arrested on a Friday afternoon when all the news channels go to sleep and nobody's around and nobody's there to cover the news. So, and it was before a long Labor Day weekend. So what they tried to do, and this is their intention, it's punitive what they did. They arrested me and said, no, the bond is $35,000 cash. In other words, if I had a $35,000 bond, that would equal about $35,000 cash, and with the bond bail bondsman would have to write a bond for $35,000 cash. And what happened was I went in, and my family, I had a very dear friend that basically coordinated everything at the last minute, and she knew what to do, and she and this person, Hector, completely saved the day. They came, got my dogs, because I had 2 labs. I was very nervous about the labs getting shot by the cops, because you hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. And I have 2 family pets I didn't want to see perish, because, the day before I was told that they're out to kill me. The judiciary and the state police are basically looking for a reason to just shoot me and kill me. So they came over, they took care of everything, and I went to jail. And I called the bail bondsman. I don't know anything about bail or bond. I didn't. Now they served me with $35,000 in cash. In other words, in order for me to get out, someone has to walk down to the state police office and drop off a bag of $35,000 in cash. That's $350,000 bond. Now, I've never been arrested before, other than that voyeurism, and that was like, they still can't prosecute me for that. They don't even know how.
Right.
I get out, and I go into jail, and they say, well, your arraignment is going to be September 12th, which is 10 days away. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Instead of me getting, arraigned the next day, they're going to elongate it for 10 days. So they're going to put me in prison for 10 days, basically, was what their goal is. So Judge Malarkey signs this and says, nope, if he pays $35,000, He can walk the streets. He'll be out on bond. He can do what his life is. He's fine, good to go. So the next morning I get bailed out, and that's, Saturday morning, and my family walks down and says, here's $35,000, and the state cops are total dirtbags. I mean, They were in there, they were like, well, yeah, just give us the money, we'll go in the back and count it, and then we'll come back and tell you what the deal is. And my sisters are like, no, asshole. You can't take the bag of money. You're going to count it here with us now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taking it in the back room. We don't trust you. You're going to count it here. And they're like, no, we don't do it that way. And they're like, well, fine, then we're in an impasse. We're here with the bail. You can't count it in front of us. They're like, okay, come in the back. So they counted it, and they gave them a receipt for $35,000. 3-4 hours later, I was let out on Saturday morning. So about 11 o'clock, I come home. I have no bail and bond conditions. I just paid my bail, and I exited the jail. And I come home, and I try to start to figure out what's going to happen. Am I going to lose my job? What's everything going on? Is there news? Is there press? There was no news or press at that time. So I said, well, things aren't that bad. I'll deal with it. I'll go to court. I'll figure it out. We'll fight it. I'm okay. So then on the way out the door, they say, oh, no, your arraignment's not on the 12th. Your arraignment is on the 2nd, on Tuesday after the long weekend. So basically what they were hoping was for 10 days I would be locked away, sweating it out in jail, not having a thing, and then they would come back and whale me again on the 12th and put me back in jail for another 5, 6, 10 months until I figured out what my life was going to be like. And then I would plead out, and they would get me, right? They're going to get me. So I said, all right, so my family comes back, gives $35,000, and I go back to court to get rearraigned on the 2nd. The minute I walk into court, they take me into custody, and they basically, and this is Judge Joan Alexander. She's the same judge that's banging the chief of police. That's not any bias or inappropriate relationship of Hartford.
Oh.
So she's sleeping with the Hartford chief of police, and she's a judge, the chief criminal judge in Hartford. So she slaps another $40,000 of cash-only bond on me and sends me back to jail. Now, when my family comes back that afternoon to pay that bail at 3 o'clock, they said, oh, no, it's too late. We can't get anybody to give him his collars, and we can't process it, and so I have to spend another night in jail.
Oh, yeah.
So they send me to jail, and I go to jail, and I hang out with all my friends, and I got 35 new friends because I went to jail, which is cool. And then I come out the next day, and they tell me that I have 47 bail and bond conditions. Like, I can't wipe my butt unless I fold the toilet paper 3 times. It's just nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And they give me house arrest, 24/7 lockdown, house arrest. I can't even go to the mailbox. I can't put my trash out. I can't let my dogs out in the backyard. I can't walk in the backyard. I can't walk around. Even people in solitary confinement get an hour a day to walk around a yard to get a little exercise. I don't even get that.
Are they watching you? I know you got the bracelet, but I mean, how do they know that you're in your backyard?
Well, the minute I walk outside the range, an alarm goes off in the monitoring company, and I am then in right now. The bail and bond condition is I have a zero tolerance bail and bond condition, meaning if I violate it in any a half an inch over the doorway step or whatever, I can then get thrown back in jail, and I'll be thrown in jail and I'll lose my bail and bond, which is $75,000 in cash.
Well, then how would you take the trash out?
I can't. I throw it out the window.
Unbelievable. Well, how do you get food? How are you supposed to eat? How are you supposed to live?
That's not the court doesn't care about that. They don't care about anything. It's all punitive. This is a punitive assassination of me, my children, and my life. That's all this is. Why?
You can only order so many pizzas, I mean, you got to get out of the house. I mean,
I can't. I cannot leave. I can only go to court, or if I have a heart attack, my heart stops. Once it stops, I can then call the ambulance, and then I can go to the hospital.
Right, after you die, then you can call, I can
yes.
see that.
But first I have to call the bail and bond idiots.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
First, to approve the fact that I should be calling the ambulance to actually go to the hospital.
All right, let's take another call here. Again, I have no way of determining what your name is. I just got your phone number. So if your last four digits are 3136, you are now on with the captain. Do you have a question for Ted? Hello?
Yes. Hi, Captain. My name's Dan Brewington. I'm kind of familiar with the case just by reading it up. I was also arrested and spent 2.5 years in prison for criticizing judges. Do you have any kind of prior history or anything that they would consider you to be dangerous? Any reason why?
Thank you, Dan, for calling in. No, I don't. In fact, I've never been arrested in this country or other countries. I've traveled exclusively around the world. I call myself one of these guys that's been around the world twice, and I've been in every country, I think, in Europe, with the exception of like Lithuania. I don't have any. I have no speeding tickets. I had nothing for 37 years. I don't have parking tickets. No.
You work on Wall Street. That's got to make you a criminal right there.
Well, I drive in from my house, and I do have to drive the highways. So, I mean, and the highways are pretty much populated with state police. So, I am careful. I travel with traffic. I don't try to be reckless. I mean, I have 2 kids to worry about. I have my life and my career to be able to afford my children and give them, school and education and food and clothing, and that's my primary focus. So, Dan, to answer your question, I was only arrested with the voyeurism, but that was initiated with the divorce, and I had never been arrested prior to that. I have no criminal. I've never been. In fact, the Cromwell police, when they first arrested me in voyeurism land, the chief detective, I call him by a different name, but his name is Vandersloot. And this person, Vandersloot, actually came to the house. He said, I've never even been here for a domestic in 10 years that we lived in the home. And I said, no, we've never fought. My wife and I never fought. We never argued. We never had, knockdown dragouts. There's no holes in the wall. There's no threats of abuse or any kind of threatening or in any way, shape, or form. And I've never abused anyone. I've never gotten in fights. I mean, I've broken up fights, but I've never been in a fight. I never instigated a fight.
You use some pretty harsh language about some of these people. Has anybody ever tried to sue you? I mean, if what you're doing is so bad, why do you think nobody sued you unless it's, I guess, true?
Yeah. There's not been anybody. Yeah, Judge Bizzuto hasn't come at me for calling her a nanny play around with kind of, silly person. And no one, my ex has not come at me with slander. Nobody else has come at me with defamation. In fact, they are the ones that have defamed me. But now that I've actually listed this, and my ex sleeping with Roger London, and, the whole Aetna machine supporting her to have an extramarital affair within the office on business hours, nobody's actually come back to me. And Aetna, from what I hear, the last I heard from anything was that my ex was really nervous about her job and how she's really nervous that Aetna might not like what she's done and what she's doing. And so they tried to put like a mini gag order through a restraining order on me a couple of weeks ago when the full protective order, the illegal full protective order was then finally dropped, and the risk warrant was actually dropped. So the next thing they tried to do was throw a restraining order on me, but since I'm on 24/7 lockdown, I can't leave the house. I haven't left the house. I'm not trying to ruin my bail and bond conditions, so no one has come after me for any slander or saying any of this. In fact, most of the reporters, his name's Mike Volpe and Raquel, who have written the story that actually got me connected with Kenneth and I think connected with you. I hate to say that, but I did research your case a little bit. Nobody has come after me. Nobody for slander or a gag order. So I mean, I think one of the problems is once they tried to do that, I would get discovery. And they're not going to want to walk down that road with me because once I get discovery, the game is over, right? I mean, we all know it's a charade. We all know it's a scam and it's a ruse. So they're not going to point.
Did they subpoena like hard drives or phone records or anything like that?
I think they subpoenaed the AT&T internet account for which I quote unquote may or may not have sent the email from. You know, one of the interesting things is the affidavit signed by this wonderful, idiotic woman, blondie, Jennifer Verno. Sorry for the insults, but she doesn't know me. In fact, 10 days after she sent me to jail, she was requesting from all these other people within our family court system to say, do you guys remember how I met Ted? I don't remember, but I know I'm going to get asked in court on the stand, and I just want to make sure that I understand when I actually met him because I don't remember anything about him. But yet in the affidavit, she clearly states that not only does she know me, but she's deathly afraid of me, and she's deathly afraid that my children are in danger and deathly afraid of Judge Bizzuto. So it's just kind of interesting, you know, that you put a perspective on, you know, the email. They don't even know if I was the only person in the house. They don't know what computer actually sent it. I'm a computer tech guy, so I have like 12 computers in the house. They don't even know which computer sent the email or if I'm the only person that was in the house to send an email.
Wow. So what do you think the key thing? It sounds like a retaliatory thing. What is the key component here that's making these people come after you?
It's retaliation for me standing up. I mean, you know, there's that saying, and I don't want to get into it too much, but, you know, the only thing that evil needs to do to succeed is for good men to lay down and do nothing. Mm-hmm. So if I stand up with my Boy Scout uniform on or whatever, and I stand up and I believe in the fact that we should have human rights and civil rights, and we should stand up for those that don't have the voice and don't have it, then I'm going to do it. And, you know, I'm not getting paid for it. I've lost everything for it. You know, so it's not like I have I need to be a martyr. That's not my case. I just wanted to make sure that I got involved with legislative government, you know, representative legislative government, and help my children understand that, you know, maybe some of what happened to them in the divorce and their lives getting destroyed by their ex, you know, my ex and their mother's attorney isn't for nothing, right? There's some value, there's some silver lining, there's some lemonade that comes out of the lemon, so to speak, right? And that's all I cared about.
I spent 2.5 years in prison because I called a judge a child abuser, and they said that I made secret hidden threats against judges, and I was too clever to make actual threats. But
you had thought crimes, Dan. That's the problem.
But what I noticed about you is you seem to have a pretty good a pretty good sense of humor, or at least an upbeat personality with everything you're facing.
Dan, it's been a hard road. I mean, I've spent a lot of time traveling around the world, and I can't talk too much about some of the stuff I did in the 90s in the jungles of Southeast Asia, but I've been through a lot in my life, and, you know, I take a perspective that you're not always going to understand everything, but you sort of have to, you know, be based or grounded in your own understanding, your own moral values, and understand that whatever's happening is happening sort of like for a reason, and that you got to just do the right thing, and maybe this is the universe's way, or God, or Allah, or Buddha's way of telling me, dude, you got to stay the course and do the right thing. And, you know, I think to your point, you know, you spending 2.5 years, I think it was a 5-year sentence that they gave you. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but
that's accurate.
And you were pro se, whereas I think the difference between my case and what I read on your case was you were not pro se. Or you were pro se, you were self-represented, and they basically ran you through the ringer. Like literally, I'm going through the ringer.
In my divorce, I was pro se.
Okay.
In my criminal trial, I had a public defender, but he never met with me. He never met with me before trial. Yeah.
You were pro se.
So, yeah. Just how often I get this quite a bit. You know, most people are pretty understanding about the First Amendment and, pretty much everybody's supposed to be created or treated equally in the United States. But how often do you get people who are sincerely believe that you're not supposed to say things about judges that you could say about anyone else? Do you run across that where somebody says, well, you can't say that about a judge?
Yeah, I get it all the time. And, Kenneth, this goes to your freedom speech, right, and your freedom sort of mantra and your oath, right, that you're taking.
Oh, you just said the F word. Uh-oh.
Freedom.
I'm sorry. I
get it all the time because the court, I think in my view, and this is my opinion of what I've had to learn over the last 2 years, is the court views itself as this infallible, ultimate, high, godlike structure, right? And you can never question it. And yet the nature of the court itself is built upon a human, and the humans themselves are they're fallible, they're wrong, they're broken. And no offense to the judges out there that aren't, but I've seen probably 25, 30 judges in the state of Connecticut. They're all freaking broken, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And say there's 500 of them. There's 99% of them are freaking broken, and the ones that aren't broken get kicked out because they're not aligned to the ones that are all broken. So I get it all the time. You're not supposed to question anything a judge says or anything a judge does, whether they're raping your kids, trafficking your children, punishing you in family court. There was a case, and I don't know if Colleen and Scott are listening, but this judge, Holly Whetstone, got removed from family court because she used children as punishment in a family court of equity against her, Colleen Booten, because she was filing motions and was not happy with the wrong decisions that was going on in the court. And so they took her kids away as punishment. Mm-hmm. Now, when does a court of equity use punishment?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that happens all the time.
I can relate to that because the judge in my case testified during my criminal trial that he gave me the choice, or he said I had to choose what was more important to me, my children or my internet writings, which nobody said were damaging to the children. It was just damaging to
him,
the custody evaluator and the judge in my case. So, I wish you the best of luck, and just keep fighting, and it's something you need to keep standing up for.
Dan, I don't know if you know Kenneth, but Kenneth, I think you need to have the stuff that I've read on Dan's show or Dan's stuff. He needs to come on your show because this is another crazy.
I do have the information that you're the Dan that he was talking about. Okay, now okay.
Roger that.
Yeah, I do have that information, and Dan, we'll have to get in contact with each other, and we'll have to bring another show on here. Absolutely.
Because I think you had a 357 gun in your case, right? You had a 357.
Yeah.
You said 357, or you had a 357, or you spelled 357, or something like I can't remember.
You heard of a 357.
Well, everything started from the 357 in my divorce, or my wife had asked for the 357.
Didn't Holly make a carburetor that was a 357? I can't remember.
No, something, yeah. But she had said she wanted it because she didn't want it near the children because she didn't approve. And there was no allegations that she feared me because of it. That didn't have anything to do that they thought that I was going to harm anybody. They just acted as if I'd just leave it laying around the house. Well, from there, it went to that was the reason, one of the reasons why they said a judge had to fear me because I didn't return a 357 Magnum. But it's just one of the things that I can understand how in your situation how they just pile on perceived danger upon perceived danger, which still equals perceived danger. So, but I appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak with you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Well, Dan, we'll get in contact probably tomorrow or within the next couple of days, and we'll have a conversation. I do appreciate you calling on.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Now, Ted, we got a couple more calls. We want to get to them, but I want to ask you something. what are you doing now for income? I mean, you're not allowed to work. You got fired from your job, right? I mean, obviously you can't work when you're in house arrest, but I mean, you got family helping you out. I mean, how are you able to live?
I'm not able. I mean, I've been graced with a great family. I took a college fund that was worth about $20,000-$30,000, and I cashed that in. And then I'm living off of that money basically day to day. So to buy groceries or pay the electric bill or anything, I'm completely, I don't have a dollar to my name. Everything will be spent.
When are you supposed to get, I mean, you got a court date coming up? I mean, how long are you supposed to be under house arrest here?
I'm supposed to be on house arrest as long as they need me to, because I'm such a terrible person, but it's hard to say right now. We're thinking probably sometime in February, the end of February, probably likely for a trial. We have a dismissal hearing supposed to take off here in the next, the next couple of weeks. But they're not, I mean, the court they can't go back. I mean, there's no going back for them. And they're just so crazy with insanity.
Well, they'd have to admit that they were wrong. That's why they're not going to go back. That's
right. Exactly. So if they went back now and said, "Oh my God, we need to dismiss this. It doesn't make any sense." And Judge Gold, the judge that I'm with now, he's the last bail and bond hearing. We talked about all the bail conditions, right, and all the bail reasonable and accommodating bail conditions, right. My lawyer Rachel Baer did an awesome job in front of the judge, and he basically picked up the email, admonished her, and just said, "You know what? He's an evil person. He just denied. He's going to have to keep his ankle bracelets. He can't go to work." He did say this, though. Well, if he does find a job, maybe he can have that person, that job prospective employer, call me, and I'll consider whether or not he should be able to work.
And that's you're supposed to find the job how?
Well, I can't.
I know, exactly. I mean, that's...
I can't.
Oh, God.
I can't find. It's just ludicrous. I mean, he's just such an idiot. I mean, I've never heard such stupidity. I can only assume that the dark overlords that are governing the entire judicial branch are like, just bury this guy. Don't ever let anything happen. Just cancel all this shit, right? And make sure he never sees the light of day, and that he screws up, and then we throw him back in jail and we kill him, or we send SWAT team to his house and kill him again, right? Try to kill him again. I mean, that's all I see coming out of the judicial branch. That's it. That's the only thing. So I'm not allowed to work. I'm not allowed to even apply for jobs. Even if I was to apply for a job, I still would have to go to court, file a motion, spend $5,000 just to present myself in front of the court to see if I could even go on an interview to go even to try to get a job. And they've offered me no state assistance. So actually tomorrow when I get home from my divorce special master's session, I'm going to actually start to apply for state assistance, because I mean, they've literally put me on.
Do you have to leave with an escort, or can you go by yourself? Do you have to leave with an escort of sort?
I go to court by myself, and I'm okay to go to court by myself. Court is literally 2 miles from here, so I typically go to court by myself. The interesting thing, though, is that the restraining order and protective order, they took the 47 bond conditions and then they added another 12 bond conditions on top of that, so that my ex can feel protected in her house and in her space, because I'm such a terror to her living up in Ellington 25 miles away and I can't leave my house. So they had to tack on another, 15 bond and bail conditions, because Judge Gold didn't feel like I was subdued enough. I need more punitive damages on my person to add. I mean, it's just nonsense.
Are they making you pay alimony and child support?
No, I never had alimony and child support, but I owned the house, the marital asset house, and so I've stopped paying the house note. My family's now paying the electric bill and cable bills and cell phone bills. I have barely enough money to try to weep along for another 5 months for food, and I'm hoping I'm hoping they'll give me state assistance, so at least I can have like a card to buy bread and juice or milk or something to eat during the week. And then I do have friends that come by from time to time. Most of my friends have kind of left me. They can't handle this kind of disruption. I mean, this is like, you can't, when you hear about it, you say, no, it can't be. Like, I have friends that are state troopers and friends that are like local cops and auxiliary police, and when they talk to me on the phone, they're like, dude, you're lying. Nobody would do that. And I'm like, no, I'm not lying. And if you come down, bring a bottle of scotch or bourbon or Jack or whatever, and we'll sit down and we'll have a conversation. And then they don't come down, and they can't handle the magnitude of the utter trauma and disruption that is being bestowed upon my life from the state of Connecticut, from the fact that I called a judge a nanny banger in an email, a private email. And it's all retaliatory. It's all retaliation for me standing up for civil rights, for family law, and then wanting to change the system. And they clearly do not want the system changed. Since they rewrote the law, for the Bill 494, Judge Carroll, Judge Solomon, and Judge Bizzuto sat in a private room. Now, the last time I thought, I checked, your separation of church and state between the legislative and the judicial branch, the legislative writes the law, the judicial branch governs the law. Mm-hmm. But in the state of Connecticut, we have judges just writing law.
Well, who was that Supreme Court judge? She said that all judges write law. It's not.
Right.
Who was that? Not Kagan, but whatever her name.
Scalia.
I can't remember her name. But anyway, we got to get another phone call in here
cool.
Real quick. Now, again, I don't have your name, just the last 4 digits of your phone number. If it's 8, let me see if I can read that here. 8332. You are now on with the captain. Do you have a question for Ted?
Yeah, Ted. Hey, this is Scott Buden.
Scott, how are you?
Good. I wanted to make a comment on your GAL. I actually obtained Margaret Bozak when I went through my divorce. I didn't have any children, and provided her with a $2,500 retainer, which I used less than 50% of that money towards my divorce.
Right.
So you spent $20,000 on someone who acted as a GAL on your case, where I went through my entire divorce because I did not have children, and I spent $1,200 on my case. So that just goes to show you where the financial incentive is for these GALs.
Right. So
absolutely.
It takes somebody like me who has money, has children. They know that I have money because the minute you walk into court, you have to have a financial affidavit. And the minute you start negotiating on what's going to be the rule of law in your divorce, they absolutely know how much money you have, how much is in the bank, how much your retirement is containing, and where's your disposable income and where your income comes from. So,
and the fact that they could use your children as incentive to financially destroy you.
Yep.
That's exactly what happened. I also wanted to comment on my wife's case. That's what Ted was commenting on before, where our attorney filed a motion for clarification, which basically wound up removing her from family court altogether, where she stated in the motion for clarification that the judge is asked to explain the use of children as instruments of punishment by judicial threat of sanction, where the judge states failure to do so will result in sanctions against them, which can include fines and loss of time with the children. The judge is asked to clearly state why she employs the children as weapons of retribution, punishment, and sanction. The judge is asked to clearly explain how manipulating the parent-child relationship wielded as a weapon of the bench is not child trafficking, child abuse, child maltreatment, intentional infliction of emotional abuse or other maltreatment of a child. That is exactly what is going on in the family court system.
And if you look at the international laws on child trafficking and child abuse, everything that the judge is doing to separate and destroy the child-parent relationships, whether it's one side or the other or both sides or whatever, it's completely aligned with that entire international code of justice of child trafficking and child abuse. And one of the things that happened on Scott's case, which is a great point, is the lawyer that actually wrote that motion for clarification of why the judge, Holly Whetstone, would actually be doing that. She then, after Holly Whetstone replied to there and actually got kicked off the bench in family court and got rolled over to what we call the juvie hellhole in New Britain, she got kicked off the bench because of that using a child as a weapon and basically trafficking their children, Scott and Colleen's children, as weapons in the case. And so what really needs to come out is the fact that these judges, unless somebody's strong enough and willful enough and willing to take it on the chin, these things are going to happen every day. And luckily, this woman, Alicia Mathers, she stood up to the court, stood up to the judge's erroneous BS. And what do you know, 3 months later, she gets grievanced by a judge, the head judge, Judge Bright, in Rockville Court. He actually wrote a grievance against her saying that she used harsh-toned language in her motion, which made her a risk of being a lawyer in the court, in the family court system. So they actually sanctioned her and tried to get her, abused. This lawyer who stood up to this erroneous crap, they then retaliated against this lawyer as a direct result of her fighting for kids' rights and zealously for her clients' rights.
Yep, and it wasn't just her, it was Minnie Gonzalez who actually asked publicly at a public hearing for an investigation into the Children's Law Center based off the industrial part that they put those children in. and I don't want to go into our story. I mean, I know this is about Ted's case, but every case is the same.
Yep.
What's happening is they're taking children away from the protective parent, putting them with abusive parents, because that's what generates money. Our children, my stepson just got Student of the Month. Before that, they were seeing a psychiatrist every 2 weeks at $200 an hour who refused to testify in front of the judge. Refused.
Unbelievable.
So what happens? The GAO goes in there, opines outside their resume, and basically speaks on behalf of the mental health professional to push a case in whatever direction they want. And it is the GAOs that are being allowed by the judges because they have, judicial immunity, basically quasi-judicial immunity, to go ahead and say whatever they want. And we have no relief from that.
Yeah. Yep. Until you grievance them or get them kicked off for some reason or for cause or for abuse or embezzlement, or some financial abuse, right? That's the only way to get them removed.
And in our case, I mean, we were lucky. I mean, my wife did lose the kid. She had, she was seeing the children 6 days a month after being an at-home mom. But the state of Connecticut was paying the bill. At least we didn't get charged $100,000 for the GAL to have the children ripped away from her.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, yep, it's it's rampant. It's basically the blueprint of the AFCC in Connecticut on how to traffic children from parents.
It's a nationwide problem. I cover this almost every single night. It is, you would not believe of how Arizona alone steals 32 children a day. That is almost 14,000 children a year. And the reason why they steal them, one, if they're special needs, they get money for federal money for special needs. This all comes out of the Mondale Act. They have found a way to take advantage of the law for profit. And if you are that cute little blonde-haired girl with them blue eyes, boy, you are adoptable. People love you. So that's money right there. They get federal money, state money, and then they get adoption money. And that's why they try to separate the child from the parent. And they tell the child, literally, your mommy, your daddy doesn't love you anymore. They don't want you anymore. They do that on purpose. And then they put the child on drugs. They've always got to put them on these psychotic drugs. They put the parents on psychotic drugs just to separate them, just so they can make money. They can get a bonus. That's all it's about. They can get that second home on the lake. They can get that new Mercedes. They can get that swimming pool in the backyard, these bastards. I'm sick and tired of them. My God,
I like to comment on that. I have never met so many parents that have autistic children until I was introduced to this parents group.
Exactly.
Right.
You have an autistic child, it's going to be taken away.
Yep. We actually have a couple who are married right now. Both of them have autistic children. I would love to see the statistics on how many of these cases have gone through where a significant change in the parenting plan has occurred post-judgment where the children were autistic or had special needs.
Right.
It's extremely high. Extremely high. I deal with them every day.
Well, I like to say at least in my wife's case, we had a happy ending. We did get the children back 100%, but it took an act of God. It really did. It took a lot of work.
Less than 1%. The CPS takes your children. It's like less than 1% that you're ever going to get your children back. That's the stats. That's the real numbers right there.
Yep.
And if you can get them back within a year, then that's fine. But after a year, you don't have your children back. The chances of you getting your children back it's zero.
Yeah.
Yep. We got the children back. We got the children back within a year, and it was outside of courts. It was because that every court-appointed vendor left. After that motion for clarification, after Minnie Gonzalez exposed publicly what was going on in our case, he basically gave up. He said that everyone, and we have 2 recordings of him saying that he paid for the decision.
So he paid for his divorce decision. In other words, he hired it through a bunch of channels, including his lawyer, and paid for the court to move the decision to his favor with the children. So Colleen could actually pay him the child support and alimony and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. And he was one of the top executive chefs in Connecticut, and she was a stay-at-home mom where her family line was in Pennsylvania. She had no one here. And the first hearing that we went to where I attended, we went with 13 people after that hearing where her ex was saying that he hasn't drank in a year and a half. He said because he read a book. We had a PI that actually caught him drinking. You would think that he would have been arrested for that. Nothing happened. You know what happened? She got charged in contempt for parental alienation. This is exactly the domestic violence topic that Barry Goldstein talks about, who is an expert on domestic violence, who says this is what the courts are using to move these children.
Yep, side to side, right? Whichever side makes more sense, yeah.
Yep.
That's the game. It's a complete game, and it's a destructive game because it doesn't just destroy the parents and the parent-child relationship. It destroys the children in their own relationship with themselves as well as the parents, and it takes a while to come back. And some people. There's another woman, and her name is Sunny Kelly, and she hasn't seen her son in 3.5, 4 years, and there's just no excuse for this, right? They just do it because they can. And there's no way to fight it. And she's been fighting it for 4 years, and she still can't make any headroom. And these same judges, there's like a circuit court of these same judges that always do the same thing. And it's funny that the judge that actually removed Sunny Kelly's child from her life is the same judge now that works as a mediation consultant for the family court system, that the person, Jennifer, who had me arrested and escalated a private email on my behalf to the court to gain and win influence with the court, she's actually now working with this judge that took this woman's son away from her and allowed her ex, Sonny's ex, to be molesting him in a pedophile way, and it's very sad, but these are the things that we face every day in Connecticut, and it's heartbreaking and it's horrific, and the fact that the court thinks that making money off this is just okay, like you would think that they'd be smart enough to go create another business to make money and stop trafficking children, but they don't get it, And eventually that train is going to run out, and somebody is going to stop it somehow, some way. And if they haven't figured it out, we're not going away. I'm not going away. I've got nothing. I've got nowhere to go. I'll be in a box living under a bridge, and I'll still be on your phone call. I'll find some way to get in, and I'll be calling and talking about it because I'm not stopping. So,
Well, that's what they want.
I like
to add that. They can't fight back.
I'd like to add that there was a 5-month investigation done into her, along with 25 other cases in the state of Connecticut, which substantiated beyond a reasonable doubt that little boy was being raped by his father.
Yeah. So these aren't things that we take lightly, and I don't share this stuff a lot, but there's a lot of parents out there that are very concerned, families with DCF issues, autistic DCF issues, parents getting ripped away from their children. There's lawyers that are have no access to their kids because DCF stepped in, and these two professional lawyers that are operating in the state of Connecticut, they don't have access to their children.
They don't care who you are.
No, as long as you got money, they can extort. You're done.
Right. They're not prejudiced by any stretch. So
all it is about is making sure that federal money is flowing through the court system. That's it.
That's it.
Well, I want to think.
You have to think the base salary of a superior court judge is $171,000 a year. These are top attorneys in the state of Connecticut making easily $2 to $5 million a year. Why would you take a huge 90% cut in pay to go become a judge? It's the whole reason why the GALs are not providing bills to their clients. And it's the whole reason why Attorney Colleen Kerwick shut down January 9th public testimony, when she brought up that the co-chair, Sue Cossino, who headed the task force, billed 16 hours on one day at a courthouse which was open for 10 hours.
Right.
Because they're providing kickbacks to the judges. The whole reason why Judge Alderman and Judge Whetstone in 2007, they became judges, why they are heading the AFCC in Connecticut, is the whole reason why they left their private practice to become a judge.
Yep.
So, all righty, my friend, I want to thank you for calling here tonight. We do have time for one more call, and I know we've got a caller here that's been calling about 15 times.
Okay.
They keep trying to call back. You do have a private number, so I have no way of knowing what you are. It comes up all ones.
All right.
So if you do have a private number or an unlisted number, you are now on with the captain. Do you have a question for Mr. Taupier?
Actually, this is more a question for the listeners, is how come nobody has figured out the path of money to the judges? The last caller hit on it, but let's face it, guys. If there's no money going into personal pockets, the judges aren't playing this game. So
right.
How is it that all the smart people in the world can't trace the money to the judges' pockets?
Well, they can, but the problem is they're protecting themselves. They're making the laws. They're the ones enforcing the laws.
No, right? We understand that, but we're not talking about law here. I mean,
well, the rules.
The GAL gets paid, or this vendor gets paid, and that vendor gets paid, and there's all sorts of money flowing around. Now, let's face it, guys. Some of that money is going directly into judges' pockets.
Sure.
Yep. Okay, real hard cash. Now, is it that our society is so crooked that There's no authority whatsoever that would go and investigate that. I think the answer to that actually is yes.
Yes.
The society is so crooked that if the judges, nobody is going to come and expose that stream of money into the judges' pockets. Now, I will mention one thing I observed in Connecticut was that Judge Monroe orchestrated, she was the architect of all this GAL stuff. And out of 1,000 GALs in Connecticut, only a select handful would get the big cases time and time again. And there was lawyers who did no real work, had no real clients, and they lived on case after case assigned by a judge.
Yeah.
And that money, let's face it, people, that money was going to trusted confidants, these lawyers. And those lawyers weren't paying taxes on it. They weren't declaring it as income. And a big chunk of it was going back to the judges.
Yeah.
And Judge Monroe mysteriously resigned last year. And she resigned because I think first off, she had no intention of resigning. But once this GAL scam came to a head last year, suddenly she resigns. There are people in the Connecticut judiciary that know that Judge Monroe was running that racket, and they whispered to her, "Time for you to get off the bench," which is a big red flag, folks. They admitted to the world that Monroe was running the racket, money was going to people's pockets, and the way she was going to save her skin was to resign from the bench, which is exactly what she did. All right. And then now Bizzuto came up and took her place. Now there's a rumor out that Bizzuto is on the chopping block and she'll be kicked out of family court very quickly. So why can't we tag something, tag some money, tag some cash, get somebody to hack into somebody's computer, find a few emails, find a few transactions, find some cash withdrawals, and find out who the judges are that are pocketing it.
Right.
Now, I can give you a list. You know, Edelman, Bizzuto, Carbonneau. I mean, they're the ones that work so hard at all these decisions for the best interest of the children that seem to cost so much money.
Right.
Okay, folks, how did they get Nixon? Follow the money.
It was following the money, absolutely.
All right, so we don't have to talk about law, we don't have to talk about Constitution, we don't have to talk about rights, because none of that applies. Because we know these clowns in black robes are doing it for the money. Because if I was a family court judge and I wasn't getting any money out of it, every freaking divorce in front of me would be done in 90 minutes, and I would be on the golf course.
Right. Living out of your RV because you couldn't afford the multi-million-dollar home on the beach anymore, right? But you'd have to, I mean, it's true. The money has got to be the sequential sort of, series of things to follow, because if somebody is paying, if a private citizen is making a payment to a GAL in the excess of $5-10 grand in a check, they should issue that GAL a 1099. And that's the way it is.
We already know what happened. There was that GAL, Mary Brigham, and she was asked for her tax ID number so the litigant could issue the 1099 with the box 14.
Right.
And Brigham refused. And then they filed a motion with the court in front of Consumpcus, probably one of the crookedest, twisted judges of Waterbury, and he denied it. He told the litigant, no, you're not going to get the tax ID number. Why? So you can comply with federal tax law? No, not in the state of Connecticut. We will have none of that.
Yes.
So the real issue, folks, is the money. I mean, granted, they're trafficking children to get the money, but they really don't care about the kids. They care about the money. I mean, if it was in the DMV and they could somehow, put an essay question on the test that the people would have to grade. The only way the kids would get their licenses is slipping the clerk $100. I mean, the DMV would do it if they could, but unfortunately, there's not much they can do over there.
Well, you've also got to understand that this corruption, what's going on here, is so big and so vast, and there are so many people involved. You've got doctors, you've got lawyers, you've got judges, you've got police, you've got politicians. It is so big and so vast. You've got the pharmaceutical industry involved in this as well. So you've got all these people involved. I want to thank you for your call. I'm trying to get we got one more call real quick to get to, but it is so big and so vast that it is almost impossible to fight. But we're fighting it. I'm fighting it. I'm committed to fight it. I fight it every night. It's getting bigger, but it's not big enough yet, but it will be. And, you know, a lot of times, another reason I believe is people don't believe it because it is so heinous and so awful that people just, that can't be true. That's too heinous. Right. That can't really be true. So people naturally shut that off. They turn their brain off and they don't want to pay attention until it happens to them. You know, so,
and I was in that camp. I was in that camp prior to getting involved with all this. I was like, I had no idea this went on.
No,
none.
I didn't either.
Zero.
No, so, okay, let's get one more call. We've just got a few minutes here left. So if the last four digits of your number is 4322, you are now on with the captain. Do you have a question for Mr. Taupier?
Yes. Hi, Ted.
Hi.
This is Denise. You are doing a fabulous job portraying our system as crooked as crooked can be. I've been going through the system for 12 years. It's a heinous crime that these vendors continue to get away with what they do. Our children are not important to society in their eyes. What's important to them is simply filling their pockets with money. It's so sad. It's disgusting, and I'm proud of everyone for putting forth the truth, because it's hard to tell the truth about how we are victimized as individuals, and more so our children are harmed, and they are put with the victims, as Ted, you said, expeditiously this evening. I mean, you really put the truth out there in a straight line. I mean, there were no curves in terms about what you're saying. I mean, it is the truth. We need to just, open our eyes to the fact that the state of Connecticut is actually ruining our family lives. They're taking away our 401ks, our ability to support ourselves, our homes, everything, and putting our children into really bad places.
Right.
This is a $100 billion. I found this out. Dean Tong called the program. He was a guest last week. I thought it was $12 billion. It is over $100 billion enterprise. $100 billion. No wonder our veterans can't get a goddamn doctor.
Well,
$100 billion.
I understand that, but Ding Tong, okay. I mean, we have people that we need to listen to and people that we don't need to listen to, okay?
Yeah.
And people that have factual information and people that don't.
And I think, I think the biggest piece here is my story was created on the fact that I was retaliated against for standing up and trying to make a difference in our community. And if all the government wants is a bunch of sheeples, and if you look at any police headline or police blotter or any report or any reporting, no news story ever covers both sides of a story. If you notice that today, nobody covers both sides of a story. Nobody wants to cover the good side and the bad side. They all want to cover whatever side they've been told to cover. And the fact is, we are losing this battle because there's nobody that can stand up. And the minute you stand up, you're the target. And you know what? I'm the target right now. And if I have to take the hail of bullets for the rest of the people in Connecticut because no one's willing to stand up with Minnie or no one's willing to stand up for fighting court corruption, then I'll be it. I don't care. I don't need to be a martyr. I'm not saying I want to die in a box under a bridge. But you know what? All that evil needs to do to succeed is for good men to lay down and do nothing. And I refuse to be that guy. So
you're absolutely correct, my friend. I hate to cut you off, but we got less than 60 seconds. I want to thank you, Mr. Taupier, for coming on this program tonight. I want to thank all the listeners. I want to thank all the callers, and I want to thank everybody who's standing up, just like you, Mr. Taupier, who are not afraid to stand up and fight. And we only got 10 seconds left, and they're going to cut me off. So again, thank you for everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Goodbye, everybody.